Many people today move through their days with a quiet tension inside. It is not always loud or dramatic, but it sits there like a tight string pulled just a little too far. We wake up thinking about what needs to be fixed, what might go wrong, what must be kept in place so that everything feels safe. Even when things are going well, the mind keeps scanning for what could slip. It is a tiring way to live. Though it can look responsible on the outside, we tell ourselves we are just being careful, just being focused, just trying to keep life from falling apart. But inside, there is often a small, steady worry that never fully rests. Some of us carry this feeling for so long that it starts to feel normal. We plan every detail, manage every moment, and try to stay one step ahead of anything unexpected. There is a strange comfort in believing that if we hold everything tightly enough, nothing will hurt us. Yet at the same time, that tight grip makes it hard to breathe. The heart wants a little space. The mind wants a little quiet. But we keep holding on. In a small town near a stretch of slow-moving fields lived a man named Arav. He was not unhappy in an obvious way. He had a home, a simple job, and a routine that worked. But he was always watching, always adjusting, always making sure nothing went out of line. He kept lists of what needed to be done, checked and rechecked small details, and felt uneasy when even one thing changed. When the weather shifted, he worried about his plans. When people acted differently than he expected, he felt unsettled. He believed that if he stayed alert enough, he could keep his life smooth and safe. Each morning, Arav walked the same path to his work, noticing every crack in the road and every sound in the air. He thought this attention was a kind of strength. It made him feel prepared, but as the days passed, he often felt tired in a way that sleep did not fix. His shoulders were tight, and his thoughts moved in small circles. Even when he sat down to rest, his mind kept reaching for something to manage. One evening, after a long day of careful planning and small worries, Arav walked beyond his usual path and found himself near the edge of the fields. The sun was low, and the light rested softly on the land. There was an old wooden bench near a quiet tree, and on it sat an old traveler. The man did not look important. He was simply there, watching the fields as if he had nowhere else to be. Arav nodded politely and sat on the far end of the bench. For a while, neither of them spoke. The old man picked up a small stone, turned it over in his hand, and placed it back on the ground. There was no rush in his movements. Arav noticed this without meaning to. Something about the stillness felt unfamiliar. After a few moments, the traveler said, almost as if he were speaking to the air, "These fields grow best when they are cared for, not when they are pulled." That was all. He did not look at Arav. He did not explain. Then he fell quiet again. Arav walked home with those words resting lightly in his mind. They did not feel like advice, just a small thought that stayed with him. The next day, he went back to his routines. He still checked everything. He still tried to keep control. But once in a while, he noticed how tight his hands felt when he held his plans. Over the weeks that followed, Arav began to see small things he had not seen before. When he rushed to fix a tiny problem, it often created two more. When he tried to force a perfect outcome, people around him seemed to pull away. The more he tried to manage every moment, the more strained everything felt. It was not that life was becoming worse, but it was not becoming lighter either. One afternoon, he returned to the fields and saw the traveler again. The old man was watering a small plant near the tree, moving slowly, letting the water sink in. Arav stood nearby, watching. There was a simple care in the way the traveler worked, as if nothing else needed his attention. Arav finally said, "How do you know when to act and when to wait?" The traveler paused, then poured a little more water onto the soil. When the ground is dry, you give it water. When it is wet, you let it be. There was no more to it than that. Yet something in Arav shifted. He realized that he had been pouring water even when the ground was already full. He had been pushing when nothing needed to be pushed. From that day, Arav began to make small changes. He did not change everything at once. He simply tried to notice when he was holding too tightly. When a plan did not go exactly as expected, he allowed it to be a little different. When his mind started to race ahead, he brought it back to what was right in front of him. He began to take small moments for himself, not to think, but to breathe. This did not make life suddenly perfect. Some days were still busy, some worries still appeared, but there was a new space around them. Arav felt less like he was being chased by his own thoughts. He started to see that focus was not about controlling every detail. It was about giving attention to what truly mattered and letting the rest settle on its own. He kept visiting the fields, sometimes seeing the traveler, sometimes not. The old man never said much, and Arav did not need him to. Watching him was enough. The traveler would sit, walk, or tend to small things with a quiet steadiness. There was a kind of balance in the way he moved through the world, and Arav began to feel it in himself too. Over time, Arav noticed something simple but important. When he cared for his own well-being, when he rested, when he stayed clear in his mind, everything else became easier to handle. He did not lose his discipline or his sense of responsibility. He just stopped letting them turn into fear. His life became less about holding everything together and more about being present with what was already there. One evening, as the sun dipped low again, Arav sat on the bench alone. The fields were quiet. He thought about how much energy he used to spend trying to keep everything in place. He could still feel that urge sometimes, but it no longer ruled him. There was more calm inside, and with it came a clearer view of what he truly needed to care for. He realized that control had never given him peace. It had only given him something to fight. What brought peace was balance, a gentle attention to his own limits, and the simple act of staying focused on what was real in each moment. So if you find yourself holding your life too tightly, if your mind is always reaching for the next thing to manage, it may help to pause and look at what is right in front of you. Give yourself a little space. Care for yourself with patience. Let clarity come from quiet focus rather than constant effort. And remember this, softly and honestly, life does not ask you to control everything. It asks you to stay balanced, to respect your own needs, and to keep your attention on what truly matters. When you do that, you will find that even in a changing world, there is a calm place inside you that does not need to be held so tightly.